readings to share with you today. Our first is from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from its 2022 mitigation report. And the IPCC brings the best science and academic findings around climate change to the people and the governments of the world. The mitigation report is huge and covers many aspects. This is an excerpt from Chapter 9 of the report covering buildings. The three pillars of the SER framework include 1, sufficiency, which tackles the causes of environmental impacts of human activities by avoiding the demand for energy and materials over the life cycle of buildings and goods. 2, efficiency, which tackles the symptoms of the environmental impacts of human activities by improving energy and material intensities. And 3, the renewables pillar, which tackles the consequences of the environmental impacts of human activities by reducing the carbon intensity of energy supply. The SER framework introduces a hierarchical layering: sufficiency first, followed by efficiency and renewable, which reduces the cost of constructing and using buildings without reducing the level of comfort of the occupant. The next reading, it's more of a dramatization. It's from an old syndicated TV show by RKO Pictures that some of us might remember from our youth. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. Yes, it's Superman, strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. Superman, who can change the course of mighty rivers, bend steel in his bare hands, and who, disguised as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper, fights a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. Final reading today. It's from the introduction to our epidemic of loneliness and isolation, the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on the healing effects of social connection and community by the aforementioned Vice Admiral Vivek Murthy. Loneliness is far more than a bad feeling. It harms both individual and societal health. It is associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease, dementia, stroke, depression, anxiety, and premature death. The mortality impact of being socially disconnected is similar to that caused by smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day, and even greater than that associated with obesity and physical inactivity. And the harmful consequences of a society that lacks social connection can be felt in our schools, workplaces, and civic organizations, where performance, productivity, and engagement are diminished. Given the profound consequences of loneliness and isolation, we have an opportunity and an obligation to make the same investments in addressing social connection that we have made in addressing alcohol use, obesity, and the addiction crisis. This Surgeon General's advisory shows us how to build more connected lives and a more connected society. If we fail to do so, we will pay an ever-increasing price in the form of our individual and collective health and well-being. And we will continue to splinter and divide until we can no longer stand as a community or a country. Instead of coming together to take on the great challenges before us, we will further retreat to our corners, angry, sick, and alone. So my mom was delighted when the letter from our school district assigned me to Miss Lavatoski's third grade class at Farview Elementary School in Kegerise, Pennsylvania. Apparently, Miss Lavatoski had done wonders with my older brother Randy, who it was said could be quite the handful. And Mom was right. My third grade year rolled along quite well, marred only by my throwing up one time during the pledge to the flag. In those days, report cards were handed to students who took them home and had their parents sign. I usually got decent grades, plus mostly positive comments, like number 02, participates in classroom discussions, or number 04, completes assignments on time. So I was handed my third marking period report card. I opened the envelope and took a look. My grades were decent, except for that C- in handwriting. Okay, so my grades were fine, but there was one comment that looked worrisome to me. I spent the bus ride home trying to figure out the comment and how I would explain it to my folks. Turns out Mom was very happy with that report card, including the comment number 07 is self-reliant. Jamie, that's wonderful. This means you do things on your own. You take initiative and you figure out things for yourself. Your father and I are very proud of you. And we had ice cream that night. I got to stay up to watch McHale's Navy with my dad. Individualism is very strong in Western culture. I'm guessing it might be more accurate to say white Western culture. Individualism comes with some powerful and I think at least some positive values, personal responsibility, and individual liberties, including freedom of speech, things that are vital to our way of life. The American way that Superman fought so hard to defend in the old TV series that I used to watch the reruns of. Superman could do it on his own, including fighting for truth and justice, maybe from a very white and middle-class point of view. What would you imagine that American way could be today? Is having the nice single-family house with the green lawn and white picket fence still the essence of the American dream? Wow, I was so relieved with my parents' reaction, even elated. I embraced self-reliance. If I was a bit shy, if I was awkward socially, if I was on the quiet side, that didn't matter because I did for myself. I learned from my mistakes. I owned my mistakes. So a couple of years ago, my wife Claire and I started to talk about what we wanted our retirement years to look like. We agreed we should downsize, but we had trouble figuring out to what or where we would downsize to. And right around that time, I was becoming more aware of how pervasive the issue of loneliness is and how incredibly costly it is. I was considering the very real possibility that I could end up lonely and isolated in my later years. I don't do small talk very well. I hesitate to reach out. And the problem is not just lonely older people. 8 in 10 young mothers say they often feel lonely, with over half feeling they have no friends. I need to say that again. Over half of new mothers feel that they have no friends. Is that true? Even if it's just 1 in 10, that's a staggering number. And just at the moment when family and friends and community should be working to support that new mom, just when we should be moving closer and chipping in to help, we're not supporting our moms and young families? Is that the American way? And our kids, our youth, corralled in their screens and on their phones. In the near future, it is quite possible that many children will have more AI friends than human friends. Increased rates of depression, substance abuse, and suicide make the issue of loneliness one that affects every family. So I don't want to be lonely as I age. I don't want to be a friend, maybe like a surrogate uncle or grandpop to those lonely parents and their kids. Co-housing is a model for housing that can create the framework for more social connection, more community. The physical design of housing has an impact on how people are able to connect or not. My suburban Pike Creek house, for example, is magnificently situated for privacy and to limited opportunities for conversation and interaction. The car is king. The street is for cars. The driveway is for cars. I press the automatic garage door opener, drive my car into the garage, press the button again, and I am safe and sound and isolated. So I have plenty of alone time when I can get on my TV, my phone, or computer screen. Suburbia is also a place to mostly avoid conflict, except when there is conflict, and then we have no idea how to handle it. So something small and even trivial can escalate beyond all reason. You've seen this? We really struggle to discuss our differences these days, don't we? The United Nations report I read earlier included an interesting concept called sufficiency. Not a word capitalists tend to use, but what's wrong with living in a dwelling that is sufficient? Needs are met, but maybe not the grander wants. We can put solar panels on McMansions, but is adding to sprawl building in a green way. Can Americans come to terms with living in smaller, denser housing? Can Unitarians? That's what the IPCC says we need to do. This is a land use issue. This is about zoning and housing density. Climate change is very much a local issue. This is thinking globally and acting locally. The co-housing model gives you a smaller dwelling area, but makes up for that in common space and in some sharing of resources. We won't all need lawnmowers. Maybe there could be some e-bike or even car sharing. Imagine the quality and variety of tools of a well-stocked shared workshop or a music room with a variety of hand-me-down instruments that any kid can try out. Most co-housing and other intentional kinds of housing are focused on environmental sustainability. That means all electric. That means solar panels and solar ready. The only way to slow and stop global warming is to stop burning gas and coal and oil. So the physical design, with input from community members, combined with an effort by community members to create a culture of cooperation, a culture of caring, can make for a more socially connected and far less lonely existence. A few shared meals during the week. That young family, the young mom comes home from the day's work. She says hi to her neighbors during the walk from the back parking area, around through the neighborhood of front porches, and to the common house where their toddler is passed from loving auntie to uncle while they sit down to a warm, wholesome meal prepared with love by their fellow community members. Maybe beloved community just needs a better housing blueprint. And don't get me wrong, conflict is inevitable in an intentional community. And people will still get lonely in co-housing. People won't always get along with their neighbor in co-housing. But conflict can be seen as an opportunity for resolution, for enlarging ideas, for building consensus, for learning, well, how to resolve conflicts. There's no voting in co-housing. If everyone's concerns and inputs are considered, a decision made by consensus will usually work better in the long run. We can all learn tools to better resolve disagreements and conflicts. And this community structure provides the framework for that learning, which is ongoing. All of us, super women and super men with powers and abilities to share. Less loneliness, more connection, more enrichment and fun, environmentally sustainable, a model to fight climate change, a loving, connected place to raise kids, and a caring, safe place to age. So why don't we have even one co-housing community in Delaware? And doesn't it sound like it would be worth trying? We're plowing up forest and farmlands to build more sprawl, but maybe we need a new and different model. There are over 170 co-housing communities in the U.S. and another 150 forming communities, of which the Newark Area Co-housing Organization is one. Co-housing started in Denmark. In the U.S., it started in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. But there are great communities across the U.S. and around the world. Some are group-specific. There's a Jewish co-housing community. There's at least 4 co-housing communities starting in the Philadelphia region, including a community for neurodiverse folks called Front Porch Co-housing. There's an LGBTQ community, and an amazing state-of-the-art sustainable community called the Rachel Carson Eco Village. It's on the campus of Chatham University outside of Pittsburgh. So historically, both Unitarians and Universalists established utopian, often communal communities in the 19th century, the most famous being Brook Farm outside of Boston. What's very interesting today is that many UUs are members and very often founding members of New Hope Co-housing community. Our group wants to be multi-generational and welcoming to all kinds of diversity. We're finding great interest from families with neurodiverse members. We're reaching out to the LGBTQ community. Wouldn't living in true diversity be amazing? I mean, the food, the music, the art, different ideas, different personalities, the fun and the joy of sharing and creating and working through stuff. We're looking to build about 30 private dwellings, sufficient but cozy, with a large common house where those magical meals take place a few times a week. You can still have all the privacy you want, with connection to neighbors in a new way and in an old way, as in it takes a village. At this point in my life, I want to be less self-reliant and more of a communitarian. We talk about beloved community, the idea that Dr. Martin Luther King espoused, where there's more care and no hatred or violence. Folks on the right will probably call this socialism or communism, although several Republicans are members of a farming community called Heartwood Commons Co-housing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they seem to love the idea. They've probably seen the evidence that living in co-housing is usually less expensive in the long run than typical housing. I don't think corporate America will ever endorse the concept of sufficiency. Remember, sufficiency should be the first consideration in those three pillars to mitigating climate heating. We're buying the Energy Star appliance, so our new stove will use less energy than our old stove, and that's great, and it helps on the efficiency side, as it doesn't use as much electricity. And love those solar panels and wind farms. That's the renewables part. There's money to be made there. So corporate America, the marketplace, will drive those improvements. But a smaller house, a sufficient house, of course, many in the world would love to live in a sufficient house. But white, middle, and upper class Americans, I don't know, baby. I don't know. We'll go for the 2 and 3 and 4 car garages, more bedrooms, larger kitchens, and large, luxurious bathrooms, home theaters, outdoor kitchens, gas fireplaces, sunrooms, waterfalls, tennis courts, wine cellars, portable saunas, bowling alleys, walk-in jacuzzis, and give up my better homes and gardens grass lawn? What kind of crazy commie idea is this anyway? There's a website called Luxatic where I got a number of these different amenities, and it's made a listing of the top 20 luxury amenities that should be part of any luxury home. It concludes its top 20 list with this statement. This is actually on the website. Maybe I should say it like this. We hope that this was a good insight into what makes a house luxurious, and by all means, we do hope that you take all these recommendations and add them to your own home to make yourself look like the richest and most tasteful person in the room. It says that. My guess is corporate America does not like the idea of folks living more cooperatively in community. They want us to be more productive and to consume, self-reliant as long as we pay our bills. Some folks in government, too, I suspect, would find the idea of people sharing new ideas and finding power in community. Well, I think, in fact, I know there are politicians and talk show hosts who will find that idea absolutely un-American. But maybe there is a better way to house people, and maybe it's worth trying right here in Delaware. And amen.